This is a presentation for the Altar Guild of St. Mark's Cathedral in Salt Lake City. Today we are going through the setup duties for Saturday. Of course, these can be done on Friday or even Thursday, depending on the schedules of the Altar Guild members on duty that weekend. Here's the checklist, and it's pretty extensive, and notice that there are many cross-references to pages in the manual. And again, if you are not sure about something, most likely you will find the answer in the manual. First item is to begin with prayer at the altar or in the sacristy. On the inside of the ironing board cabinet are several Altar Guild prayers. So just choose one and read it aloud together prayerfully. Check all candles and replace if necessary. So this photo in the middle shows candles that are probably ready to be replaced. And we make that judgment by seeing if there's less than 3 fingers width of candle between the holder here and the cap at the top of the candle. There are also oil candles that need to be checked. And when you unscrew the top, you will see the oil inside. Here's the top level of the oil. That's about right. And but if it's a bit lower than that, it's a good idea to fill it using the oil bottle in the cabinet under the desk. The photo does not show this, but this is a squirt bottle, so it's very easy to fill the candles using this bottle. Check the red candles on the high and low credence tables and replace if necessary. So if the candle is 1 finger width or less, then it needs to be replaced. And to check the width of the wax in this candle, you'll need to take it out of the brass holder here. The votive stand in the photo on the left has quite a few empty votive containers, so those should be taken out and replaced with fill votive holders like we see here. This is the cabinet under the desk, and you can see on the upper shelf are the votive holders for the red votives, and there again is the oil bottle for the oil candles. The taper holder should also be brought into the sacristy, and there will be stubs of used matches on the top of the stand here. So take those out and discard them. Also, short tapers like this are best discarded, and then you can add a few more long unused tapers, which you'll find in a box in the cupboard next to the hymn numbers. The vigil and ombre lights should always be lit, and this light next to the ombre in the left-hand photo is fresh, so it's fine. But this candle, this is the one that's near the icon, is very low, and at this point it should probably be changed out. One of these candles at the votive stand should always be lit as well. The jars can get quite hot, so you might need gloves from one of the drawers under the sink counter to handle the candle that you're taking out. To put up the Sunday title and hymn numbers, you'll need to refer to the bulletin, and several bulletins should be in the sacristy by Thursday, but if not, then you can find some in the printing room. When you're putting up the Sunday titles and hymn numbers, you might need to use the stepladder, which you can find leaning against the side of the large wardrobe in that space outside the sacristy. Change hangings if necessary. So the key to knowing whether or not you need to change the hangings is this calendar above the desk. Most of the days of the church year are marked as green, and then we just keep the green hangings, but there are feast days that show up as different colored days on the calendar. And in July, we don't have any feast days on Sundays, but if, for instance, one of these Sundays showed up in a different color, like this Saturday or this Friday here, then that would be the key to you to about which color hanging to use. And so the hangings are in this pull-out rack in the cabinet to the right of the work table. And further information about hangings can be found in this instruction sheet about the use of the burse and the veil. So it's talking about the burse and the veil, but they go along with the hangings, and um, they will have the same color or same theme as the hangings. So this is also helpful to figure out which ones you need to use. And the burses and veils are in the marked drawers under the vested chalice cabinet. And here is the burse and veil used for most of the church year, partially taken out of its cloth envelope. Fair linens are these linens that are on the altars and the credence tables. Here in these two photos, of course, they're obscured by the dust covers. So whenever you're working in the on the Saturday setup, or at any time you're setting things up and checking the tables, keep an eye out for stains and other problems with the fair linens. And if they are stained, if you find a fair linen that's stained, take it home with the linens to wash. If you're not one of the Altar Guild members who does linens, then leave the fair linen in the sacristy and bring it to someone's attention. Bring it to the attention of one of the other members who does wash linens. In the meantime, you'll need to replace the fair linen with a clean one, and those can be found in these shelves on the cupboard, same cupboard as the seasonal hangings, and they're stored wrapped around these tubes. Most of them are marked so you can know which one to use for the correct altar or credence table. And if you take the soiled fair linen home to wash, you can use an empty tube to transport it back and forth. Whenever we go into the sacristy, we see used vessels that need to be washed. So although this is kind of far down on the checklist, it's actually something we usually do right away. And the important thing about washing vessels, the most important thing is to remember that anything that has held or touched sanctified elements needs to first be rinsed in the piscina. So this is the piscina, a sink on the right-hand side of the sink counter, and the water drains from the piscina directly into the earth. So the sanctified elements can be returned directly to the earth rather than going through our drainage system. Next to the piscina is the soaking basin that contains water mixed with a bit of oxygen cleaner from the tub behind the basin. So when you're washing the vessels, the things that have held or touched sanctified elements are here in this bullet point list. The chalices can be first rinsed with boiled distilled water. The patens, which are the dishes that go on top of the chalices, and these other items on this list don't need to be rinsed with the boiled water. They can just be rinsed with the cold water from the piscina tap. That helps us save on the distilled water. So the patens, the bottles, the purificators, lavabo towels, and corporals can be rinsed. In the case of the purificators, rinse first if they have stains, then place them in the soaking basin. Lavabo towels do not need to be rinsed if they're dry and clean. They can just be hung on the rod for reuse. The corporals also, if they're clean, they don't need to be rinsed before washing. They can just be shaken out into the piscina and hung on the rod for reuse. The corporals are the large linens that are spread on the altar for the Eucharist. And they're kind of like the tablecloth or the picnic blanket, and they catch the crumbs of the sanctified hosts. So they do need to be shaken out into the piscina. But then if they're clean, just hang them on the rod to be reused. So after these items are rinsed in the piscina, they can be moved to the basin in the other sink on the left-hand side of the counter and washed like regular dishes, except it's a good idea to use a purificator, not a sponge, to wash the silver, because some of the sponges can leave small scratches on the more delicate silver items. Another thing to keep in mind is that there are several chalices with closed bottoms, which tend to trap water. So they should never be placed in a filled basin right side up. Place them in the filled basin upside down, and be sure to not let any water flow onto the upended closed bottoms. Further down the checklist, you have the setup for Sunday evening and Sunday morning Eucharist. And this is fairly involved, and you will need to refer to the pages in the manual here, pages 4 to 6. But here are some visuals to help you get a bigger picture of what that setup looks like. So on the left-hand photo is the Saturday evening or weekday setup. And one item that's missing in this photo is the little key to the ombre, the key with the green tab. So that should be on this tray, along with these other items. The cruets on the tray are the smallest cruets that we have. One of them has the jewel in the cross at the top. The photo is not clear enough to show it, but the cruet with the jewel in the cross on the lid is the one that takes the wine. The other cruet takes the distilled water. This square box here is the divided box for holding the wafers. And this small circular box, which we call a pyx, has the lion head on it, and that's the one that holds the gluten-free wafers. And then, of course, a vested chalice in the center. Although most of the silver vessels are kept in the safe, we store the lavabo bowls directly in the cabinet, and just make sure there are enough towels there for the upcoming services. For Sunday morning, here is the setup when everything is placed in the cabinet and ready to go out on Sunday morning. Let's go through it briefly, starting with the ciboria in the back. So you have an empty and a filled ciboria, and then the square gluten-free wafer box. It looks similar to the divided wafer box in this photo, but it's a bit flatter, and as soon as you open it, you can tell the difference. Then we have the large wine flagon in the back here that holds the wine that will be sanctified for the Eucharist on Sunday morning. And then the medium cruets here lined up on the side for backup wine and water. The dress chalice is in the center with the burse and veil stacked on top, ready to be draped over it after it's been taken out to the high altar on Sunday morning. And then 2 extra chalices at the right here. When setting up for Sunday morning or any other Eucharist services, you will refer to the vesting instructions that are posted inside the right-hand cabinet door. And bottles of wine are in the lower left-hand cabinet of the work table. Empty wine bottles and empty Vigil light bottles can go in these boxes in the hangings cabinet, and once they're filled, they'll be taken out for recycling. Large priest wafers are in the red can. This is the right-hand cabinet, the large right-hand cabinet in the sacristy to the left of the desk. So large priest wafers in the red can, gluten-free wafers as marked, and then the 2 blue cans contain the regular wafers. The smaller can contains the small priest wafers. These are used for the Saturday and weekday services. And one other item here are these, the replacement vigil candles. So one of the earlier slides mentioned replacing the vigil candles if they've burned very low, and this is where you will find those. Linen drawers. Linens are located in the drawers and marked. This tiny purificator is used for the traveling communion kits. If you're out of these small purificators, you can find more in one of the high cabinets behind you. If you're facing the work table, in the cabinet behind you, there will be a marked cabinet that contains more linens and supplies for the traveling kits. Check the bulletin to see how many traveling kits are needed, and the instructions that are posted next to the bulletin board are pretty extensive, so I won't go through them here. One thing I will add, though, is it's a good idea to label the communion kits that are ready to go out on Sunday. And to do that, you can look in one of the drawers behind you to find, and you'll find scrap paper or Post-its and pens and pencils. The baptismal bowl we use in the cathedral at the moment is this ceramic bowl with the wildflowers painted on it. And you will take it to the sacristy, pour the remaining blessed water out into the piscina, and rinse it in the piscina. That might be all you need to do, but if you If it seems to need to be washed, if it feels a bit slimy, then wash it in the basin in the other sink and dry it, and then fill it with about an inch of blessed water. The small container at the entrance to the chapel, you will need to take that back and wash it as well, but hang it up before filling it, because if you fill it in the sacristy and then bring it out and try to hang it up, the water will spill out. So to fill the small container at the chapel entrance, you'll use this squirt bottle of blessed water. So here is the cabinet with the waters in it, and this cabinet is directly under the piscina. So we know that the water is blessed if it's in this container with linens tied to the handle or in this marked container. And if the blessed water is getting low, try to get the attention of a clergy person on Sunday morning and ask them to bless some more of the distilled water. Clean candle lighters and replace wicks if necessary. So here are the candle lighters hanging on the wall just outside the sacristy. You'll notice that the tips here are a bit sooty, so that's the part that needs to be cleaned. You can just use some mineral oil, the oil that's used for the oil candles, put a bit on a paper towel and clean it with that. And if these little tabs are in these positions, that means there's still quite a bit of wick left in the tube. But if the tabs are up, getting higher up, then the wicks will need to be replaced. Here are the replacement wicks. They're on the shelf next to the hymn numbers. So the hymn numbers are in this box right here. And this, by the way, is the box with the clean wooden tapers for the votive stand. The trick with these wick replacements is to get the end of the wick through this hole, which is like kind of like an eye of a needle. You need to scrape the wax off of the end of the wick. The most efficient way to do that is to bite the end of the wick and pull it through your teeth, but then you end up with a mouthful of wax. So there's another method, which is just to scrape the wax off the tip of the wick by using a paring knife that's in the drawer, the tool drawer under the sink counter. Include the special cleaning duty for the week as listed in the manual. And here is the list from the manual. To do the cleaning duty, you will of course need tools and supplies. There's a utility closet just inside the door that has mops, brooms, and dusters. And there are more cleaning supplies and tools under the sink counter. The last item on the checklist is to take the used glass votive containers home, clean, return, and refill them. To clean them, you place them upside down on a cookie sheet spread with a paper towel, heat them in the oven for 20 minutes at 250 degrees, then wipe out the wax with a paper towel, and you might need work gloves because the glass containers will be pretty hot. And of course, if you didn't know this already, you can use this method for your own candles at home. Here is a box with partially full of empty votive holders. So once it's all filled with empty, ready to be cleaned votive holders, it can be taken home. When you refill the clean votive holders with new candles, so here is a box of votive lights that's on one of the shelves underneath the desk. These candles come with the wicks flattened on top, and you'll need to make sure the wick is standing up when you put it in the clean votive glass. Postscript: if you are so inclined, you can do the more involved version of cleaning the taper holder from the votive stand. So normally we just pick out the match stubs and throw them away. But if you have the time, and if you'd like to see a nice new layer of white sand on the taper holder, you can go through this process. And I won't go through it here today. You can just stop at this, pause at this slide and learn how to do it, and do it if you feel like it. Well, that's all for today. Thank you very much.